Chapter 12. Dreaming. The first thing Reuben did when we got back to his house was call Quill with a full update of the day. I hadn't even thought about him until Reuben mentioned it. Poor Quill. There were so many people wrapped up in this case. With Endgame's involvement imminent, Reuben wanted to make sure Nisa was ready. For the first time, though, he didn't excuse himself to his study to talk. I couldn't hear Quill's side of the conversation, but I was able to gather some things from what Reuben said. For instance, that there had already been a push within Nisa to be publicly recognized as an official dome. Vic. Their focus now was to create a plan for a smooth transition. That should lessen the fallout from Endgame inevitably turning their attention there, especially with Areli promising protection for its population. Change was inevitable as this case continued to its conclusion, but at least they'd had time to prepare a little. The two of them talked for only a short while before making a promise to touch base again soon. Reuben wished him luck when they disconnected. That sounded like it went well.
He was less frustrated than I thought he'd be. I suppose he's had time to reconcile with what's coming. With a large population of both biosynths and espers, they have some reason for concern. He's mentioned before that they've had people show up there claiming to have managed to get away from various projects, labs and such. He's worried people who found normalcy there may be in jeopardy now, but at this point they can only brace themselves. The day side may also have to come to terms with their biosynth regulations through all this as well. Areli isn't as powerful as some of the other places here on the day side, so it's difficult to say what will happen. But, well, Areli isn't the only place with shadow domes and sub-communities of biosynths.
He had mentioned Asteri once as well, but I wondered how widespread it really was.
If our little trio of Espers had made it to Nisa, things might have gone differently for them.
That's true. Kinda wish they had made it to Nisa. That would have been better for them, I think. But then this case would have gone quite differently.
Things could have been different for you in Nisa, too.
It's true, I could have got together with a biosynth. I'm happy with where I am, thank you. I reached for his hand, twining my fingers with his.
I wish I could say things would go back to normal for you now that we've accomplished at least part of our original goal, but...
We both know that my old normal is gone for good, no matter what happens. But I'm okay with that. Things change. That's just how it is.
With this case going the direction it has, maybe things are looking good for you to be able to give a proper think about settling in.
Not having to have a bodyguard.
I don't mind being a bodyguard.
Please. I know how being glued to me has impacted your ability to work. You can't continue to drag me around on every case.
After this, maybe we can reevaluate your TPPS status.
That would be nice. I can't not be a queen rank anymore, but it would be nice to consider what that means for me longer term. I feel like I haven't been able to see past this case and making some kind of statement with it for so long. But still, it hasn't been all bad. In some ways, it's been a breath of fresh air to be in Cerna. I didn't realize how stifling New Albion even was until I left.
I remain glad you can find at least a little positive in it all.
Oh. Yes, always affectionate. I see you're not counting yourself as a positive, though I admit I'm not surprised. I rested my head on his shoulder, shutting my eyes as I sighed very loudly.
I want to say I didn't mean it that way.
But deep down, you really did?
I
pulled away and looked up at him, reaching up to rest a hand on his cheek. One day, I'm going to get you to tell me why you're so convinced you aren't worthy of being loved. When you're ready. And that same day, I'm going to hold you down and make you listen to every single thing I love about you. From your dorky sense of humor, to that dimple when you smile, to your amazing eyes, that look you get on your face when you're concentrating. How easy it is to fluster you.
Please stop. I am not sure I'm going to be able to handle more of that.
You better brace yourself because the day is coming, my dear. My dear. Out of everything that's happened, the one thing I wouldn't give up no matter what is meeting you. I need you to understand that. Sometimes when you're just waiting for things to fall apart, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I need you to believe in me, in yourself, in us. I'm giving us a chance, but sometimes I worry you aren't. Not really. Not if you're waiting for me to leave. His hand tightened around mine, and he squeezed his eyes shut.
I don't want it to seem that way. I'm sorry.
His head drooped.
I'm just terrified of losing you already. I don't mean to make it seem like I don't think we can work.
He looked up at me, eyes almost desperate as they searched my face, maybe trying to see if I was angry at him.
I want to believe it too. It's not that I lack faith in you, it's me. God, I'm sorry. I always turn into this complete mess, don't I? I just don't want to drive someone else away.
I tipped his head up, peering into those dark eyes, then leaned in to place a very gentle kiss to his lips. Hey, you're not a mess. And even if you are, it's fine. People are messy. I'm messy. If you're a mess, then I love the sort of mess you are. It's the best kind of mess. I kissed him again. Oh, hello, music change. Is tonight the night? Tonight might be the night, guys. Brace yourselves. He let out a quiet sigh as one of his hands came to rest on my shoulder, then my face. Lighting there so briefly, I felt I could have almost imagined the touch. Still holding back? His eyes flew open.
Morgan.
I just smiled at him as I teasingly messed up the front of his hair. He buried his face against my neck. Oh, he said it! Yay! Hooray! Good job.
I love you.
I wove my fingers through the back of his hair, shutting my eyes. I love you so much, Reuben. I need you to know how much I need you in my life.
That's my line.
He pulled away, then gingerly clasped my face as he kissed me again. Reuben always kissed me with such tenderness, like he thought I might shatter under his touch, like he thought if he showed even the slightest amount of real want, the spell would break and I'd leave. It didn't frustrate me to see those moments when he lacked confidence. It frustrated me that something in the past made him so afraid of ruining things. I wound my arms around him, wishing I could convince him I was here to stay. We parted slightly and then he kissed me again, lips just skimming my mouth before he pressed in more firmly. His mouth opened and I felt the tip of his tongue tasting the faint mint from his earlier cup of tea. There was a catch in his breath, the beginnings of a groan, when our tongues slid alongside one another. Then once again, he pulled away. I almost smiled when he kissed me a third time. We had kissed before, but this somehow felt like Reuben testing the waters, trying to figure out where I'd stop him. His kisses were tentative, heartbreakingly cautious. What he'd do when he realized I wasn't going to stop him was what I wanted to find out. There was heat there I'd never felt before, less restrained and just edging on frantic, that sent a pleasant thrill of anticipation through me. One of Reuben's hands lingered delicately on my neck, his thumb tracing the barest hint of a caress at the corner of my jaw. Oh man. Interesting. Have I ever had a choice in like the fun time section of this game before? I don't remember. I might have actually with Ari that one time, because I kind of remember like letting Ari take his time. with Reuben, I mean, we do know he likes a confident woman. And if we can believe Winter's comment about tying him to the bed, he might like a woman to take the lead here. So maybe that's how we handle this? There's probably no wrong option here, but I'm curious. I didn't know if he was waiting for me to take the lead or not, but I did suspect he was so unsure of himself he might not. I was determined to show him that I wanted this. That I wanted him. That's a good point, good point. So I shifted position, sliding one knee over his lap as I turned to face him. I wasn't quite sitting on his lap yet, but almost. When I pulled away again and looked up at him, I studied his face. His expression was so full of aching want. I am not feeling particularly patient at the moment, so let me know if this is too fast. We can slow down. I pressed feather-light kisses to his lips. Just so you know, I have been waiting for this for such a long time, and I'm incredibly close to throwing myself at you in the most embarrassing way. The look on his face. He let out a soft laugh, then pulled me the rest of the way onto his lap.
You don't have to be patient. In fact, I would much prefer if you weren't.
All right. Awesome. I held his gaze for a moment, then leaned in to press my lips to the underside of his jaw. He sucked his breath in sharply, hands tightening on my hips. Beneath my lips, his pulse quickened as I let my mouth travel up to his ear, gently sucking his earlobe between my teeth. A low escaped him, and I moved a hand to rest on his chest. His heart was pounding as I slipped my fingers between the buttons on his shirt to brush his warm skin. I trailed playful kisses down his neck, smiling as he finally groaned and relaxed against the back of the sofa. It was almost as if he'd been waiting for permission to enjoy this moment. That one small reaction sparked a fire in the pit of my stomach, and I shifted closer to him. I let my tongue glide in smooth circles over his skin, noticing every hitch in his breathing, the way his hands couldn't seem to find a place to rest. They moved from my hips to the small of my back, then my shoulders, then back to my hips, and to the back of my head when my mouth found its way down to the top button of his shirt, which I wiggled it free so I could plant a kiss to the center of his chest. When I drew back and looked at him again, nudging another button free, the expression on his face sent the little fire in the pit of my stomach to a full blaze. His gaze was hazy. Hazy? Yes, the new word, hazy. Hazy. Still uncertain, but full of desire. He swallowed hard when our eyes met. I leaned in to kiss him once more as I unfastened the rest of the buttons. Then let my hands glide down his torso as he groaned against my mouth this time, his hands moving to grasp my face. I was thinking that we could relocate, if you want. His eyes fluttered closed and a sigh escaped.
Yes.
Reuben and I made it to the bedroom door before he turned to me and, in a cautious voice,
Are you certain?
I tugged him a little closer, lacing my fingers through his. I've been certain. Reuben kissed me again, hands cradling my face as he pressed my back to the doorframe.
I feel like I've made you wait a while.
Best things are worth waiting for. He bent his head to kiss the side of my neck, the hollow of my throat. I let a little pleased moan escape me. Ooh, well, now that is a great CG. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of this one. And to my surprise, I found my feet lifted from the ground so he could kiss me more easily. My back stayed pressed to the doorframe, but I still clung to him, arms around his neck and legs wrapped tight around his waist, wringing a pained and needing groan from him as the space between our bodies disappeared. Every single part of my body was suddenly alight as our bodies rubbed against each other in just the right way to make it clear I wasn't the only one affected by the proximity to each other. Somehow we made it to the bed from there, falling on the mattress together. I had Reuben's shirt most of the way off by the time he was leaning over me again, loving the feel of him beneath my palms. And I'm gone! Goodbye! He shrugged out of it, flinging it away before his lips found mine again. My shirt promptly joined his on the floor. As Reuben pressed my hand to the mattress, twining our fingers, his mouth found its way to the top of my chest. I curved one of my legs over his hip, dragging him close again and stirring a painful ache deep in the pit of my stomach when I felt the hard nudge of him against me. He rolled his hips against mine, a groan escaping him when I let out an unconscious gasp and arched up. Reuben's hands were at times gentle, at times exquisitely rough. His mouth was insistent, drawing out gasp after gasp of pleasure until my head was swimming with savage need. And every time our eyes met, his expression was torn between disbelief and deep, deep yearning. Aww. Look at those handholds. I hadn't expected that level of stormy, urgent passion, but we had both been holding back too long. It felt like the world retreated for a long time. Finally, when the need had abated and we were left in a breathless tangle of bare limbs, I could only hold him and listen to the sound of his frantic heartbeat. We lay like that for a long time before Reuben spoke again.
I think I forgot how comfortable this bed is.
His voice was a husky, half-asleep mumble that made me smile as my fingers traced idle shapes on his chest. Might not be as comfortable as you remember with me in it.
I think it's 10 times more comfortable with you in it.
I didn't even know how awake he was, but his sleepy, slightly slurred words were adorable. Mm-hmm. Save that for after you've spent a few hours in it with me stealing the blankets.
I keep having to tell myself this isn't a dream. It feels juvenile to say it that way, but...
I don't think it's juvenile. I propped myself up and looked down at him before pressing a soft kiss to his lips.
When I realized I was falling for you, I kept telling myself that I shouldn't. Now I'm sorry I waited so long to let it happen.
I felt the same way. His surprised expression made me laugh a little. Yeah, you guys were like literally 2 peas in a pod.
I can't imagine why you'd feel that way. I just felt like you were dealing with too much to bother with me. And Winter said I should...
Look, Winter is a good guy. A good friend. And if he warned you about falling in love, that's valid. But also... friends don't always know best.
Somehow I get the sense I'm going to have to reconcile with the fact that you do, though.
Of course. Always. I'm glad you figured it out so early.
Well, I don't mind it.
I lowered myself back to him, head on his chest. I think we both had valid reasons for being cautious. But it just got to a point I couldn't ignore it. And I didn't want to. That's all. One of Reuben's hands found mine and gave it a slight squeeze, but he didn't respond. And after a while, I was certain he'd fallen asleep. Aw. I followed soon after, still listening to the sound of his soft breathing. I was pretty sure I only slept for a couple of hours before I woke up again. Reuben and I had gone to bed pretty early, so it was about 2 in the morning when I found myself staring at the wall in annoyance at the very audacity of being awake. Reuben's chest was warm against my back, the rise and fall of his breath soothing. But not enough to put me back to sleep. Okay, I was worried for a second that he had disappeared in the middle of the night again. So, phew! I managed to carefully untangle myself from him somehow, intending to get some water. I paused to sit on the bed for a few minutes, watching the lights from outside play across his features as he slept. He looked so young with all the usual worries wiped from his face, as most people did. A gentle smile crept to my face, and I brushed the tousled hair from his forehead before I stood and headed to the kitchen. I paused once to re-roll the bottoms of the very baggy pajama bottoms I'd taken to wearing because Reuben kept it distressingly cold in the house at night. The house was quiet, and even the sounds from the street outside faded as I padded down the hall. I I was almost in the kitchen when I hesitated, one hand on the bar as I glanced back at the living room. Something felt off. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, but I wasn't sure why. That's probably a good reason. I took a halting step back before a shadow launched itself at me over the back of the sofa. I staggered back against the bar, a scream that was caught in my throat, never making it past my lips before a hand clapped over my mouth. Something painful jammed into my side, and a jolt of pain shot through my body, followed by numbness that glued my tongue to the roof of my mouth and sent me to the ground. Well, that's not great. Everything went dark, and that was the last thing I remembered.